Dear student, welcome back again in our today's session. So as you can see that today I am going to talk about on the topic primary data. In my previous lecture, I have already discussed about on the concept of data and the importance of data. And in my present lecture, I am going to discuss in detail about the primary data. So without further ado, let's start our today's topic. So first we will understand about the concept of primary data. So basically primary data refers to the information collected first hand by the researcher specifically for the purpose of the study. It is an original and unique data that has not been previously published. This is called primary data. In simple terms, we can say that about the primary data. So basically, if we talk about the primary data, so it is the backbone of original research as it is collected specifically for the research purpose at hand, and its collection involves a direct interaction with the subject matter or the respondents, ensuring that the information gathered is highly relevant and up to date. The uniqueness of primary data lies in its direct relevance to the research questions posed by the investigator, making it is a very powerful tool in studies requiring the precise and contemporary insight. So, if we talk about the primary data, so we can say about the primary data that it refers to the information collected firsthand by the researcher, by the investigator, specifically for the purpose of the study for the finding. And it is original and very unique data that has not been previously published. After discussing about the concept of primary data, let's understand the characteristics of primary data. So if we talk about the characteristics of primary data, so as you can see that the first one is originality. So basically primary data stands out due to its originality. It is the first hand data that is directly collected by the researcher. This characteristics is very essential because it guarantees that the data is free from the previous biasness and any kind of manipulations. Since no other study has used this data before, it is provides a fresh perspective on the research questions, and the research is the first to interpret this data, adding a layer of authenticity and trustworthiness to the research findings. Original data is a particularly valuable in the field where understanding current trends, behavior, or condition is essential. Now, the second one is specificity. If we talk about the specificity, that means it is the primary data means that it is tailored exactly to the research needs. Unlike secondary data, which might only partially relate to the researcher's questions, primary data is collected with a specific goal in mind, and this precise ensures that the information is directly relevant, making the analysis more straightforward and focused. For example, in a market research study aiming to understand the consumer preferences for a new product, primary data collected through the surveys or focus group will directly address the questions at hand, unlike the secondary data, which may only provide a general consumer trends. Now, the third one is control. So basically, we talk about the control. That means control is a significant advantage when collecting a primary data. The researcher determines every aspect of the data collection process, including the type of data collection, the methods used, and the sample size, the sampling techniques, and the environment in which the data is collected. This control ensures that the data is accurate, reliable, and free from external influences that could be skew the results. For example, in an experimental study, the researcher can control variables such as the environmental, the participants' exposures to a certain conditions, and the timing of the data collection, ensuring that the outcomes are directly related to the variables being tested. And the last point is timeline. So if we talk about the timelines, the relevance of primary data is closely tied to its timeliness because it is collected specifically for the current study. It reflects the most recent development, trends, and conditions relevant to the research questions. In the fast moving fields such as technology or public health care, having a up to date is a very critical for making the informed decisions. So, for instance, during a public health crisis like a pandemic, primary data collected on the current infections rates and the public behavior and health system responses can provide a needed to the make timely and effective intervention. So, these are the characteristics of primary data. Now, next we are going to discuss about the methods of collection. How we will collect the primary data. So there are so many methods of collection of primary data. As you can see that the first one is surveys and questionnaire. These are widely used to gather the information from a large number of respondents. In simple terms, we can say that surveys and questionnaire are among the most popular method of collecting a primary data. They are versatile tools that can gather a wide range of data from a large audience. Surveys are typically involve structured questions that respondents answer either in a person, over the phone, via mail, or online. The structure of these questions, whether open ended or close ended, can significantly impact the type of data collected. And for instance, close ended questions like a multiple type provide a quantitative data that is easy to analyze, and while open ended questionnaire offer a qualitative insight that can reveal a deeper understanding and attitudes. So the design of surveys and questionnaires also allow for standardization, making it easier to compare and analyze the response across a large group of people. Now, the second method is interview. So interviews are a powerful method for collecting in-depth qualitative data. They allow for a more personal and detailed exploration of research topic. Interviews can be a structured, semi-structured, or unstructured, depending on the level of flexibility of researcher desires. Structured interviews follow a strict set of questions and ensuring a consistency, while unstructured interviews are more conversational, allowing the more free and more free flow of information and deeper insight. Interviews are particularly useful in exploratory research where the goal is to understand the complex issues and behavior or attitudes. For example, in a social science research, interviews with the individuals from the different backgrounds can provide a rich and nuanced data that other methods might not capture. Now, the second method is observational method. Under the observational research involves the researcher immersing themselves in a setting to collect the data through the direct observation. This method is particularly useful in studies where understanding behavior in its natural environment is essential. Observation can participants where the researcher is actively involved in the environmental setting, or non-participants where the researcher is observed from the distance. The data collected through the observation is often qualitative and provides insight into how people interact with their environment, how they behave in a certain situation, and how they respond to the specific person. For example, in a study of customs and consumer behavior in a retail store, observing how customers navigate the store, what products they spend the most time on, and how they with the sales staffs can provide a valuable data that might not be captured through the questionnaire and the survey alone. Now, the next one is experiments. Experiments are scientific methods of data collection that involves manipulating one or more independent variables to observe their effect on dependent variables. This method is particularly useful in establishing a cause and effect relationship. In an experiment, the researcher has a full control over the variable and the conditions under which the experiment is conducted, ensuring that the data collected is both reliable and valid. Experiments are commonly used in the natural sciences, psychology, and social sciences. For example, in a psychology experiment studying the effects of sleep on the cognitive performance, researcher can control the amount of sleep participants get and measures their performance on the various cognitive tasks, ensuring that the results are directly attributable to sleep deprivation. So these are the few characteristics and few methods of primary data collection. So let's understand once more. The first method is survey and questionnaire. Survey and questionnaire are widely used to gather the information from a large number of respondents. Second one is interviews. This is most commonly used methods. Researcher conduct one-on-one or group interviews to collect in-depth information. Third one is observation. The data is gathered through the direct observation of behavior, events, or a situation. Now, the last one is experiments. Researchers conduct the controlled experiments to test the hypothesis and gather the data. So, these are the methods of data collection. As you can see that the first one is surveys and questionnaires, second one is interviews, third one is observation, and the last one is experiment. Now, the next we are going to discuss about the advantages of primary data. So if we talk about the advantage, so as you can see that the first point is tailored to a specific research need. That means primary data's the greatest strength is its direct relevance to the specific research questions. Researcher can design data collection methods that target exactly what they need to know and ensuring that the data collected is both relevant and useful. This tailored approach means that the researchers are not limited by the scope of existing data, allow for a more focused and effective analysis. For example, in a study exploring consumer preferences for a new product, the researcher can design a survey that specifically asks about the features of the product and pricing the preferences and potential improvements, providing an insight that is directly applicable to the product's development and marketing strategies. Now, the second one is high level of accuracy and reliability. Because the researcher controls the entire data collection process, they can ensure that the data is accurate and reliable. This control reduces the likelihood of errors or biasness that might affect the data's validity and reliability. For example, in a controlled experiment, the researcher can ensure that all the participants are exposed to the same conditions, that the data is collected and instruments are calibratedly collected, and the data is recorded and analyzed in a standardized manner, ensuring that the results are reliable and valid. Now, the third one is allow the researchers to gather a detailed and a rich data. Primary data collection methods such as interviews and observation often result in a rich detailed data that provides a deep insight into a research topic. This is a particularly valuable in a qualitative research where understanding the context, motivation, and experiences of the subject is essential. For instance, in a study on the impact of a community development program, interviews with the participants can provide a detailed narratives about their experiences, challenges, and successes, offering a richer understanding of the program impacts than the quantitative data alone could provide. So these are the advantages of primary data. And as you can see that there are few disadvantages of primary data. The first one is time consuming and expensive to collect. That means collecting the primary data is often more time consuming and expensive than using the secondary data. The process involved designing the data collection tools, recruiting the participants, and conducting the data collection and then analyze the results. So each of these steps requires a significant time and resources. For example, conducting a nationwide survey might require the substantial and financial investment for staffing and materials, and also the logistic as well as the time spent in the planning, execution, and data analysis. Now, the second one is requires a significant efforts in data collection and analysis. So if we talk about the disadvantages, so the collection and analysis of primary data requires a high level of effort, skill, and expertise. Researchers must carefully design their data collection methods to ensure they gather the most accurate and relevant data possible. They must also have expertise to analyze the data correctly, which can involve a complex statistical techniques, quantitative and qualitative analysis methods for the both. This type of process is a labor intensive and requires a careful attention to detail at every stage, from the designing the data collection tools to interpreting the results. So, for example, in an anthropographic study where the researcher is embedded in a community, the process of data collection can take a months also on even years also. And then subsequent analysis of the rich quantitative and the qualitative data requires a deep understanding and skill. So overall, we can say that about the primary data, it is invaluable for researchers who need to accurate and relevant and detailed information that directly address their research questions. While the process of collecting and analyzing the primary data is often time consuming, costly, and labor intensive, the benefit of obtaining a high quality and tailored data that can provide a fresh insight and support robust the conclusions often outweighing these challenges, whether through the surveys and interviews, observations, or experiments. Primary data collection is critically component of rigorous original research. So overall, we can say that primary data is very essential for every researcher. Thank you.